Welcome to episode 102 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Myers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. Today I'm interviewing screenwriter Jared Frieder, who wrote a script called 3 Months, which was recently put up as a blacklist table read. We talk about his career as a screenwriter, how he got his agent, how this script happened to be chosen as a blacklist table read. And he's also won a bunch of contests with this screenplay, so we talk about that too, what sort of help winning each one of these contests actually did for him. So stay tuned for that. This podcast is brought to you by Final Draft. When inspiration strikes, strike back with the Final Draft Writer app for iPad and iPhone. Carry your scripts in your pocket for writing on the go, then easily sync back to your desktop using Dropbox integration. Start your writing career with the industry standard Final Draft. Visit finaldraft.com to learn more. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they are very much appreciated. A couple of quick notes. Any websites or links that I mention in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcast, and then just look for episode number 102. Couple of quick updates. I continually build out the SYS script library. I just posted the screenplays for While We're Young, Ex Machina, End of Tour, Mississippi Grind, and Slow West. They were sent in by Sherry Frost, so thank you very much, Sherry, for sending those screenplays in. If you have a screenplay that you do not see listed in the script library, please do email them to me. The SYS script library is completely free. We have over 1,000 scripts in the library, many hit movies and award winners and television shows. All the scripts are in PDF format, so you can download and read them on whatever device you use. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/library. I just want to mention, too, a free webinar that I'm doing on Wednesday, December 9th. I'm basically redoing the webinar I did in August and September. I had a lot of people who weren't able to attend, so I'm going to do the exact same webinar, again, live. It's called How to Effectively Market Your Screenplay and Sell It. I'm going to go through all the various online channels that are available to screenwriters and give you my unfiltered opinion. I get questions all the time like, does the blacklist work, or does Inktip work, or which contests should I enter? I've tried pretty much every marketing channel available to screenwriters, and I'm going to give you my unfiltered opinion on each one and tell which ones work and which ones don't. Again, this webinar is completely free. Don't worry if you can't make it to the live event. I'll be recording this event, so if you sign up, you'll get a link to the recorded event after it happens. To sign up, just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/free webinar. That's all lowercase and it's all one word, sellingyourscreenplay.com/free webinar. I'll, of course, link to it in the show notes as well. Also, if you're already on my email list, you don't need to register. Anyone on my email list will get an email from me telling you exactly how to sign up and go to it. The webinar will take about 2 hours. I get lots of questions. The last 2 times I've done it, lots of people had lots of great questions. No question goes unanswered. So again, if you have a question, screenwriting related question, this is a great time to get it answered by me. Again, just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/free webinar. Again, that's sellingyourscreenplay.com/free webinar. A quick few words about what I'm working on. I'm almost done with my teaser trailer that I'm going to be using for my Kickstarter campaign. I've been talking about this for the last couple of months. I'm planning on launching it in early January. I'm going to be setting my goal at $12,000. I've basically already raised $15,000, so the total budget of this film will be around $25,000. So it's a micro budget feature film for sure. And when I say raised, I basically have one actor kicking in a little bit of money, and then I'm kicking in the rest. I've been talking about this for months on the podcast, so I'm excited to finally be rolling this out. As I said, it's probably going to be early to mid-January. I'm going to roll this out, and I'll put the teaser trailer up there so everybody can see it. The only thing I have to do now is I'm just doing some graphics. I'm working with a friend of mine, Adam Strange. He's going to be doing some graphic cards. All the sound work is done. The editing, the video is all cut together, and it's basically there. I'm just putting in. It's basically like a little poster that we're creating right now, and I'm going to slide that in once that's done, and that will pretty much be it. So stay tuned for more updates on this. I'm going to be starting to do more research into Kickstarter, how to launch the campaign, how to set up your Kickstarter page. So I'll be updating that in the next couple weeks as well. I got the next draft. I've been talking about this on the podcast too, my spoof comedy. I got the next draft done as I was supposed to. I sent it off to them last Wednesday, which was the day before Thanksgiving. I'm actually recording this now the Monday after Thanksgiving. So I got that to them. Basically, I did a quick pass on that. Basically about 3 days, I whipped up a new pass. There's still some things after I got done and sent it in. I mean, I really wanted to hit the deadline. I knew I wouldn't be able to work on it over the Thanksgiving holiday, so I wanted to get them a new draft. But there's a couple things I think that they'll probably come back with, and then I had one idea of my own. Just mixing up the protagonist. I have a bunch of people. It's a musical group, and we're trying to just sort of figure out who's the protagonist and what their arcs are. And I had some ideas on that after I completed this draft over this weekend, just as I was thinking about it. So I want to probably pitch that idea to them and then maybe take another pass at that. But they'll definitely have some more ideas. So I'm sure I'm not done writing on that. Right now, they're talking about shooting this in January or February. So that's a good sign. They still like the script, that they think that we're on track for that. You know, if they're saying shooting in January, February probably means March, April, or maybe even May by the time we actually shoot it. But at the very least, they seem like they like the first couple drafts of the script enough that they're still lining up directors. They were telling me about a couple of directors that they have that they're thinking about interviewing for the project. So that's all a good sign. I have high hopes that this one might actually get produced. Another thing I'm working on. A couple of weeks ago, I met with a producer who is also a musician who wants to turn his life story into a movie. I sat down and I talked with him for a couple of hours and kind of just heard his experiences as a as a film producer and as a musician. And I pitched him on the idea, as I was listening to it, I pitched him on the idea of turning it into a television show, HBO, maybe an HBO show, maybe a network show. It doesn't seem maybe that edgy for an HBO show, but there's lots of places now producing TV. A bunch of people through my SYS email and fax blast have optioned and sold pilot scripts. So I've kind of been thinking, gee, I really want to get in and try writing one of these. And he was telling me his idea. I'm like, wow, this would make a great TV show, I think. So I pitched him on the idea of turning it into a TV show, because initially he was thinking a feature film, and he liked the idea of turning it into a TV show. So I think that's the direction we're going to go, is sort of an episodic TV show. He had a successful career as a musician and also as a movie producer. The actual story that we're going to be doing is his story and sort of the life as a musician in a very particular time period in Southern California. And then we'll use all of his connections as a producer to go out and pitch this project to the various companies that he has relationships with, which are substantial. As I said, he's a successful movie producer as well, produced probably 20 films over the last 15 or 20 years. And then, of course, if his connections don't work, I have my own connections. As I said, I've had some people sell and option pilots through my email and fax blast. So then even if his connections don't pan out, at least I'll have a backup plan to go and then take it out myself. There's no pay for something like this. I'm going to be doing the show. I'm going to be writing this pilot episode on spec. But the other things I pitched to him, and he seemed amenable to it, was that obviously I'll be one of the show creators. So we'll both be the show creators. I'll obviously write this pilot episode with his help, and then I'll also be a producer on the project. The real money in TV is being the producer / executive producer. It's being that showrunner, it's being the one who creates the show. If the movie, especially if you can get a network, I'm not so sure about cable. It's a little bit of a different scenario on cable, but on network TV, if you hit that 3-year mark of doing episodes for 3 years and you get into syndication, it's tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. But it goes to the show creatives, those executive producers, those showrunners. So that's really where you want to be in TV, not just writing episodes for whatever WGA scale is. Probably for TV it might be like $60,000 or something an episode, and you would get some residuals every time that episode aired. But you really want to be the show creator. So that's what I'm pitching on the idea. He seems to like me. We got along. He's a really nice guy, really interesting guy. As I said, he's got some really great stories, which I think will work out well for this particular project. I get quite a few offers from people who want me to help them write their life story or turn their novel into a screenplay, and I usually dismiss them pretty quickly. So I thought it might be worth just going through sort of my logic of why I am taking on this project as opposed to the dozens of other projects that do get pitched to me. As I just said, number one, he's got a very unique story, which I think has a lot of potential. I mean, that's first and foremost. You have to hear a story that you like and are interested in, but and this definitely is something that I think is a cool story that will be interesting. So that's all good. But with that said, a lot of these other stories that people are pitching me to, a lot of them are perfectly interesting as well. So that alone, while it's very, very important, I mean, it's absolutely essential. You have to be interested in the project or it's not going to work, especially on spec. I suppose if someone was paying me, I might consider it, but on spec, you have to like the project. So the other things, though, as I mentioned, he actually lived and worked in a very cool, very specific time period here in Southern California. So I think that's a very unique angle on this material. You know, having a first-person account like that is going to give us a real advantage over anyone else who might like to do this story. In the entrepreneurial world, I listen to a lot of entrepreneurial podcasts as I try and build selling your screenplay. And I listen to these things, and in entrepreneurial, entrepreneurs often talk about your unfair advantages. You know, you try and leverage something that you have that most other people simply will never be able to have. And I think his being actually, you know, alive and living during this time period is kind of an unfair advantage. You can't fake that. I mean, and if we go in to pitch this story and they like the basic concept of the story, it's not going to be that easy for another company to pitch a similar story because they're not going to have someone who actually lived and worked in this specific time period. So I think that's another real key thing. He's actually, you know, the real deal who actually lived it. Plus, as I mentioned, he's got a track record of getting films produced. So at the very least, I'm sure he can get us some decent meetings. So that's a huge factor. If someone comes to me with a novel or their life story and they want to turn it into a movie, I mean, if they don't have any connections as a producer, a film producer, TV or film producer, then essentially it's just relying on me to do all of that marketing work, which potentially I guess is fine, but I might as well just market my own projects. Why am I going to write somebody else's, turn someone else's novel or life story into a screenplay and then have to do all the marketing myself? So if someone comes to me with no experience in terms of producing or raising money, if someone comes to me and wants to raise the money, that would also be a big thing because that's a difficult task. So he's taking on a lot of the hard work. I mean, writing a script obviously takes time and work, and it's difficult to write a good script. However, actually marketing it and having those connections is going to be very, very essential to getting this thing produced. You know, you're going to need a track record as a producer. As I said, I think he's probably produced 20 movies over the last 15 or 20 years. So no one is going to look at him and say, well, gee, can this guy get it done? It's like he's pretty obvious. And because he's been in the business, you know, for decades, he's got a ton of connections. He's going to be able to just pick up the phone and, you know, people will return his calls and get us meetings. So that's another big factor. He's not just a musician with a great story. He's a musician with a great story, and he's a film producer that can get us meetings. So these things combine, and I'm thinking this is actually probably worth writing on spec. And as I said, it's a potential, it's high risk in the sense that there's no guarantees I'm writing on spec. I'm not getting paid up front. However, if it does go, and there's at least a reasonable shot that it will because of all these things I'm talking about, him being a producer, then there's high reward as well because I will go on as one of the show creators. So, and the other thing, may sound silly, the other thing, he lives like 15 minutes from where I live, so it's very convenient to just meet up with him and talk about the project. And this sounds maybe trivial, but again, there's nothing like meeting someone in person. You could do it on Skype, you could do it over the phone, but actually meeting someone in person and looking them in the eye and getting sort of a sense of them, that goes a long way because there's going to be like legal issues. You know, we're going to have to sign some contracts at some point, and you just want to know you're going into business with someone, and you can get that over Skype, but there's something you get in person. So again, it goes back to potentially living in Los Angeles or the Los Angeles area. And Los Angeles is a big area. I mean, he could live in Los Angeles and I could live in the Los Angeles area. We could be 2 hours apart. So some of it's just purely coincidental, but at least if you live in the Los Angeles area, there is that opportunity that someone like this might live close to you. And that's a big thing. It's especially if we're working closely on this project, and, you know, something like this is, if it goes, it's going to be, you know, years. But even if it doesn't go, it's going to be a solid 6 months to a year of meeting up, doing rewrites, going to meetings, all of that stuff, and his living close is definitely a big help on that. Anyway, so that's what I'm working on. Got a lot of things, a lot of irons in the fire. So now let's get into the main segment. Today I'm interviewing Jared Frieder. Here is the interview. Welcome, Jared, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show with me.
Oh, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
So to start out, I wonder if you can just give us a quick overview of your career in the entertainment industry. Take us all the way back, maybe even to your formative child years, kind of how you got interested in screenwriting, and bring us up kind of to the present, and then we'll dig into some of your current projects.
Oh, cool. So I grew up in a really small town called Cooper City, Florida, which is Everglades adjacent, if you will. It's like kind of close to Fort Lauderdale, but it was a pretty small conservative town, and it was very Catholic, it was very Christian, it was very Orthodox Jewish, so it was super homophobic. So as a little gay tot, writing was as a means of escape for me. And fiction was my first love, and I grew up loving Southern Gothic lit, like Flannery O'Connor, and it was just always something I did. And I applied to Columbia's undergraduate fiction writing program in New York City and got in, and that was basically my salvation, and constantly creating characters to kind of share the day with, and wanted to live that highly romanticized Brooklyn short story writer life where you're like eating ramen and going to underground poetry reads and being as pretentious as humanly possible. And I realized that would not buy dinners. And my parents wanted me to go to law school, so I applied and got in. But that wasn't great. And I just discovered screenwriting because one of my best friend's parents wrote for television in the 90s out here. And I was like, wow, this is really just a feasible way to tell awesome stories. And I'd always loved TV and film, but growing up in Florida, like the same people who built the pyramids wrote television, aliens that came down from space. It wasn't something I ever thought I could ever even dream to do. And so I bought a one-way plane ticket and moved out here and hustled my butt off, and then couldn't get a job because to be a PA, a production assistant, the lowest level on either a film set or a TV show, you had to have been a PA or know someone, and that was not something that I, had in my back pocket. So I applied to screenwriting MFAs, and USC, which I was told was the #1 screenwriting program, they wanted a 10-page dramatic sample of my writing. And I went through an experience as I was graduating college where I was waiting for medical results. And it was just a really painful time. And I thought that that period of my life would just be wasted time of passivity and depression. But I really found out who I was and what I was made of and what I really, really wanted. That period also informed my decision to come out here and try and make it as a screenwriter in Los Angeles. So I woke up from a fever dream at 4 o'clock in the morning and wrote about this kid named Caleb who grew up in Miami and was super queer and had an experience where he was exposed to HIV and then had to wait 3 months to be tested. And again, it was like in a fever dream. I wrote the first 10 pages and I was like, I have never written anything that's better than these 10 pages. And I'm a huge outliner. That's my huge writing caveat is I cannot write if I don't have a super intense anal retentive outline. So I outlined the thing for 2 months, and then that makes writing easy. I wrote it in a month, and I sent it out to a bunch of contests thinking, probably not going to have a lot of luck with an AIDS comedy. And I did, and a lot of contests responded really well to it. And I think that is my secret, or the advice that I give to people, is that I'm like a no one, and it was just sending a script that I was really passionate about, and I guess people could see the passion on the page, and then they really felt passionate about it, and I won some contests, and my life changed. So that's kind of my story.
Okay, so let me just dig into a couple of things here. So did you finish law school, or you
I didn't even apply. So I applied, and I took the LSAT, but I rescinded the applications and then moved to Los Angeles the day after I graduated undergraduate. So I never ended up going to law school.
Okay. So then how long were you out in Los Angeles before you said, you know what, I got to apply to some graduate film programs? How long did you spend kind of just bumming around here in LA?
Maybe like a year and 3 months.
Okay.
Months, just a bit over a year. Yeah.
And you had written this 10-page, was it a 10-page short? Or was it the first 10 pages of the feature?
Yeah, it was the latter. It was the first 10 pages of the feature. They just wanted USC, and I encourage people who have like either writer's block or trouble writing, not even just to apply to USC, that's great too, but like there are writing assignments as a part of the application where you have to write a set of 2 scenes with these really great guidelines that one's like 2 people are stuck on an elevator and neither want to be there, write a 2-page scene. And then there was another creative assignment like that. And then there was just a give us 10 pages that kind of could be your calling card that really define you in terms of your voice and the tone and the subject matter that you're passionate about that you'll be writing in the future. And it was that third part of the assignment that spawned 3 months. Yeah.
Okay. So then did you get into USC and then attend USC for 2 years?
You know what I did? So I got into USC and I got a scholarship, which was cuckoo bananas. But then I ended up dropping out after a semester because I got a job on a ABC family show called Chasing Life, where I was the writer's assistant, and then they were kind enough to let me co-write the series finale. So that was awesome. But I learned a lot in that semester, and I really encourage people to apply to MFA programs. It's just a great way to kind of start building your portfolio of samples to send to agents and managers and to get your foot in kind of the writing world. It was just a great place to learn, albeit I wasn't there as long as I should have been, but yeah, whatever.
So okay, so you've written this 10 pages. Did you already have you had written the whole feature? You just sent them the first 10 pages? When did you start to actually fill out the full feature film?
So I finished the 10 pages and sent it off, and I was just like rereading it, and I was like, I've never written something as good as these 10 pages before. And the story was something that I'd never seen before. You know, a lot of AIDS narratives are ones from, you know, the 90s or the 80s, where it delved into, you know, the epidemic and the sadness of people dropping dead in the streets and being really sick, and, you know, the historical context of how taboo homosexuality was and how it was a gay disease. But I had never really seen something that kind of subverted that and kind of got to the core of how HIV functioned today. You know, there's an amazing group of people living with HIV who are still, you know, in some ways looked down upon because people think that HIV is a shameful thing, and that's such an irresponsible perspective. These people are, you know, some of, you know, at the forefront of industry and innovation, and they're just the greatest people ever. And I just wanted to shed light, not so much on the disease itself and the medical setbacks of the disease, but, you know, the cultural shame that we place on the words HIV. When you say HIV or AIDS in a room, people are like taken aback, and everyone kind of, their breathing slows. And, you know, it's not the same way we look at like heart disease or cancer or these other things that are, you know, affecting people's lives. And I kind of wanted to come at it from that place of shame. So I finished it after I wrote those 10 pages. Like I said, I'm one of those people, I need a note card for every scene. I had also never written, this is my first feature, so I was terrified that I was going to fuck it up. So I wanted to take as many precautions while writing it as possible so that I could create a finished product I could be proud of. So I literally had a note card for every scene, just how Caleb, my protagonist, developed, and how the secondary characters developed. And if I couldn't write at the bottom of each note card either what the purpose of the scene was, what it established, or what the conflict was, I tossed it out. So I was incredibly methodical in terms of my outlining process. And then I wrote it, and it's so easy. It's so much easier to write something when you have that detailed outline. Yeah, and then I sent it out. So without that MFA application, 3 months would never have existed, which is weird to think about.
Yeah. Okay, so you mentioned that you submitted it to a bunch of contests. I wonder if you can kind of talk about that experience. And, you know, sounds like you got some positive feedback from them. You know, people are always asking me, as someone who runs, you know, a screenwriting blog, hey, what contest should I enter? So I love to have people on that just can say, hey, I entered this contest. And we don't need to necessarily, you know, poo-poo contest, but I'd be curious to hear, you know, hey, I entered this contest and this is kind of what happened. I placed as a semifinalist and this is what I got out of it. Because people are always wondering how good are these contests and what kind of juice do they really have?
Yeah, I would never poo-poo any contest. Even the smaller ones that I've placed in or won have been like really incredible experiences. The biggest one for me, well, there's 2 large ones. The biggest one in the industry that I won was the Austin Film Festival screenwriting competition. I won their comedy screenplay contest, and that really kind of changed my life. it's that and the nickel that are like the top two. So I've heard. And you go to Austin, and it's great because that contest is not only a screenwriting contest, it's also a screenwriting conference. That festival is a festival for the screenwriters, which in this industry that, you know, prizes the actor and, you know, the director, to have this nurturing environment that prioritizes the screenwriter and the script. It was awesome. I went to the greatest panels. The guys from 500 Days of Summer had a great panel, writers from Bob's Burgers. So, you know, it's film, it's television, it's everything you want to know. And it's a great way to network and meet people in the business. And on the flip side, it's like the greatest screenwriting competition. I won a nice chunk of change. It's really cool. It's in this like antebellum ballroom in Austin, and it's like the Oscars. They call your name, you give up, you give a little speech. Great people. I was when I was at that podium accepting, like Matt Weiner and Winnie Holtzman were at the first table in front of me, and I was fangirling so hard and trying to keep my composure, which I did not keep because I am not capable of doing so. But yeah, and then from that, so Austin does a really cool thing, and I don't think a lot of people know this. Once you win, there's like a producer's handbook that has the name and log line of all the winning scripts in it. And they send it out to industry professionals. So I'm with Paradigm now, Paradigm Agency. And the reason I got with Paradigm is because someone from Austin, I think, I'm not even sure how this happened. This is how behind the scenes it is and how much legwork they do for you that you don't even know at these contests. But I believe that someone from Austin distributed that list to someone at, I think it was Denver and Delilah, the production company, and then sent it to a coordinator at Paradigm, and the script was just sent up the ranks, and then I got signed for both TV and features based off of the script. So that's something you don't know, besides the money, besides the cool award, besides the conference. They just do a lot of legwork for you. So that I highly recommend that one. And then for any LGBTQ storytellers, or not even storytellers, if you have a script that's somewhat queer, deals with queer themes, the first contest I ever won, which really changed my life in terms of my confidence, was the Outfest Screenwriting Fellowship, which is during the Outfest Film Festival, which is the best LGBTQ festival and one of my favorite film festivals ever. It's here in Los Angeles during the summertime, and that was great because that was like a 4 or 5 day workshop where I got to take off work, and you come in and you have mentors like Don Roos, who did The Opposites of Sex and has just written so many great films, was one of my mentors. And Darren Stein was my mentor, and ended up directing a reading of 3 months. Every winning script puts on a reading at the Directors Guild in Los Angeles, and it's directed by a great director, professional actors. Veronica Cartwright played my grandma. She's from Alien. Played my grandma in the script. I apologize. And that was great. And it's a great experience both for nurturing the script and helping it develop, and also getting your name out there. Some other ones that I won that were cool: the Big Bear International Film Festival. That was fun. Got to go to Big Bear for a few days. Sizable check. And you get like free screenwriting programs. I also won the Screencraft Comedy Screenplay Contest, which was another great one. It's a sizable check, and I got to talk to, one of the prizes was talking to, I think his name's David Mandel, who's a writer from Seinfeld. So we like talked on the phone for a while, and he read my script and gave me feedback. And then I did the Sundance Diversity Initiative, which is it's for, in the indie film space. But it was a wonderful 3-day stint at the Los Angeles hub of Sundance, right across from LACMA. And I got to work with Joan Tewksbury, who wrote the movie Nashville, just like a screenwriting hero and legend, for a day. And then again, I had mentorships and private sessions with Kyle Patrick Alvarez, who directed the Stanford Prison Experiment, and Kyle Killen, who did the Lone Star, the TV show, and wrote that Mel Gibson, Jodie Foster movie, The Beaver. So that was another great opportunity, and you can't really go wrong with these contests.
I'm curious, I get a lot of people, especially they're new to the business. There's this kind of idea that if your script is good, it'll be recognized, and there's no, hurdles to that. And I'm curious, you mentioned obviously the Austin is one of the top contests, and you mentioned the Nichols. Did you also enter the Nichols and not place in it with this script? I'm curious if there were some losses. And the reason I ask is just so people understand that it's not all just a bed of roses. Even if you have a good script, there are going to be some setbacks.
Totally. I think the nickel deadline was really early, so I'm not sure I was finished with the script by then. I gotta go back. I don't know if the nickel was one that I ended up applying for. I missed the deadline this year because I wanted to apply this year, but I did not get some contests. I didn't get the script pipeline contest, which is a popular one. I didn't place in Scriptapalooza, which I think those are great contests as well. Yeah, just not everyone's going to respond to your script for sure. And then I also only placed, I was a semifinalist or quarterfinalist in the Final Draft Big Break contest.
Okay.
So I didn't win that one either. Yeah.
No, that's good to hear. I appreciate you sharing that. I'm curious just how you found all of these contests. I mean, obviously there's some of the bigger ones, but you mentioned I think it was the Big Bear. It's a contest I have not heard of. How did you go about researching these contests and even finding them to enter?
The World Wide Web. I scoured the internet, and there was a great page, and I wish I remembered the address or had it. I think people can just Google it. If you just Google top 10 screenwriting competitions, Big Bear was on there, and it was one that was one of the most underrated ones you haven't heard of. But it's a nice prize, and it's a great trip up to a film festival close to LA, and they also did a reading of it there. And it's smaller, but it was pretty fucking cool. Oh, I also did not win the American Zoetrope Award. Now I'm going back in my head at all the ones I fucking fucked up with. But you can't win them all.
Yeah. So I want to go back on something you said. You were working on a TV show, Chasing Life, and they let you write an episode on that. Maybe you can back up a little bit and tell us, how did you actually get that job working on that show? Because I think that's always a question people have. Hey, how do you just kind of get that first job in the business?
Totally. So actually, my first job in the business, do you know the show Bob's Burgers?
No.
Okay, it's a great animated show on Fox, and it was my favorite show. And like I said, I couldn't get a job, so I think my one piece of advice would be to be as ridiculously ballsy as possible, because I literally there's this contact sheet that goes out to industry people with all the upcoming shows for the next season, the television shows. And I basically stole a list from my friend's email and emailed personal emails with resumes to every single show, and none of them wrote back. So then I was like, fuck. And I bought a premium LinkedIn account, which is for $60, and you can send 6 inbox messages to anyone who has a LinkedIn account. So Bob's Burgers was my favorite show. I found the head of the animation studio, Ben Box Entertainment, and I sent him a LinkedIn message. And I was like, hey, so listen, here, every time I like a joke, I write it down, because jokes are rhythmic and musical, and the more you write them, the better you are at writing your own. So I was like, here are all the jokes from Bob's I like. Here are all of my jokes. I'll walk your dog, pick up their shit. I'll make your kids PB&Js and take them to Crossroads or whatever school. I mean, he didn't have kids, but I didn't know that at the time. But I was like, just give me a job, and that worked. So that's how I got my first PA job, by scouring LinkedIn. I think people don't use LinkedIn enough, but it's a great way to reach out to a lot of different people. So use LinkedIn. And then
great advice. That's great advice, and that's not something I've actually heard. So that's a great tip.
No, LinkedIn's great. And then for Chasing Life, when I won the Outfest Screenwriting Fellowship, the Screenwriting Lab, that year the opening film at the festival was called Life Partners. And that is a great indie film written by the wonderful Susanna Fogel and Joni Lefkowitz. And Susanna and I met at an Outfest party, and she had gone to Columbia a few years before me, and I knew of her through friends and alumni contact lists, and I just went up to her and said hello, and we became sisters within 5 seconds. It was just like two peas in a pod, and she became my mentor, and she created Chasing Life. So when I was in school, I got an email from her being like, hey, we need a writer's assistant who can write episodes, because we have 20 episodes, we have a smaller room, and we just need someone who might be able to kind of help us out there. And I said, sure. And then eventually the episode order was shortened to 13 after I took the job, because they were most likely going to cancel the show. But because my showrunner, Sean Smith, who's God gift to the world, allowed me to pitch in the room, and he liked my pitches, he let me write the finale with him. So it's a bit of good luck and a bit of networking and kind of seizing opportunities. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. let's move on to your agent. So you got this agent basically through the winning of the Austin Film Festival. I'm curious what happened once you got the agent. Did he send you out on meetings? Maybe you can just talk about that relationship a little bit and kind of, again, I get a lot of people that just feel like, man, if I could just get an agent, everything will open up and everything, I'll be this great working writer and it'll shoot my career to the stratosphere. And I'm just always curious to get like actual experiences. I mean, this is a good agency. Certainly they're well connected. So I'd be curious to hear kind of your story once you signed, what happened and what sort of stuff did you get out of it?
Yeah, so I actually got management before I got an agent. I got management about almost a year, a little bit less than a year before, actually, the previous summer, because once I won Outfest, Benno Box, where I was PAing, optioned one of my animated pilots, and I had no one to help strike that deal. So Benno Box set me up with a management company that's been wonderful, Haven Entertainment. So they were awesome, and they were sending me out on some meetings, but management doesn't quite have the breadth that agents do in terms of getting industry exposure. And once I got Paradigm, first of all, Paradigm's awesome. I'm just in love with them, and I have the greatest agents on TV. It's this guy, Chris Licata, and Ellie Schiff, and then in features, it's Valerie Phillips, and it kind of did change my life in a way, and it kind of did break everything because I'm always writing. That's my biggest piece of advice to everyone. You have to constantly be churning out material. So, we have this great relationship where I constantly give them new material and they send me on all these awesome meetings with everyone. And again, they can't get you a meeting if they have the contacts, but if that person doesn't respond to your script, you're not going to get a meeting. So it's a combination of being with the right agent, having the right scripts, and I've gone on, I signed when I was on Chasing Life and I was working all day. So for the first few months with Paradigm, I couldn't really go on meetings because I had a job. But then as soon as that ended in late July, I've just had like meetings every day, and it really has changed my life. And but again, I've heard horror stories with people at great agencies that have agents that aren't passionate about them, and they don't get on meetings. I just won the lottery, and my agents are really passionate about me because they're crazy and I love them. Yeah, man, it's really just about finding the agent that's passionate about your material. I try to hound agents beforehand when I first came out here and I had one terrible script, and you don't want to just have an agent who's like, yeah, sure, I'll take you on, and they're not passionate about you because they're not going to spend their time working for you. But it really is about trying to find ways to get that agent. And again, screenwriting competitions.
Yeah. Now, back up a little bit. You said you got this manager by optioning. It was a TV pilot that you optioned?
Yeah.
And so maybe you can take us through that. How did you get that TV pilot optioned?
So, again, it was Benno Box Entertainment. So I was a PA on The Awesomes, and they do Bob's Burgers, and they did Brickleberry, and now they have this new show, Border Town, and a new show, Legends, and they're awesome. And I love animation. It's a really great world to get into out here. But so once I won the Outfest Screenwriting Lab, the LA Times did a little write-up on all the winners' scripts. And a great friend of mine, Catherine Rosgart, who's now at Netflix, but she was the assistant to the head of development, Mike Clements, at Benno Box. She was just kind of a guardian angel, and we became fast friends there. And once she found this article and found out I won these contests, she let her boss know. And her boss asked if I had any animated scripts because he's like, oh, we've got this PA who's winning writing contests. Let's see if he's got anything that we might be able to use, which is also just a really unique story because Mike is such a great guy. But yeah, he read this pilot of mine called Marathoners and optioned it. I was juggling coffees and making copies one day, and he called me into his office, and he's such a big wig, powerful guy at the company. I was a little PA. I was like, oh, I'm definitely getting fired. I sent something to Korea that should have gone to 30 Rock, and now I'm going to get my head chopped off. But he was like, no, I loved this piece of writing you did. Let's try and make a cartoon together. And even though we didn't end up selling it anywhere, it got me management, and it was a nice little chunk of change. And yeah, it just it was my first time pitching. It was amazing. And again, it's just being nice to people. It's write all the time, be nice to everyone you meet, be a fucking good person that people want to help out. And apply to contests.
Yeah. So I'm curious, you talk about, they call it sort of the water bottle tour where you're going to all these meetings, and it sounds like you've been doing a lot. What has come out of those? Have you started to get some jobs just making connections?
Totally. So I I was commissioned to write a dance pitch of mine, like a summertime dance movie, along the lines of like Step Up and Pitch Perfect to Mason Novick's Development Fund. That was a management meeting that they set me up on. And with the agents, I mean, it's everything. I mean, I've gone out from staffing meetings. I'm like developing with these great producers, and I'm a lot of things I'm hesitant to talk about because it's like in the early stages. But yeah, things come out of these meetings all the time, whether it's staffing or development or all of the above. And it is a water bottle tour, but it's up to you, right? They can only get you through the door, but when you sell yourself and they like your script, and the executive or the coordinator or the development person sitting across from you is like, what else do you have? If you have those ideas and those pitches and those scripts and those kind of stories prepared, then it's kind of up to you to kind of get the ball moving. And meetings are what you make of them. So as the writer, as the talent. So yeah, sometimes people don't like generals, but a general can very quickly turn into a development meeting or a pitch meeting, depending on what you've prepared. So
yeah. I'm curious. You mentioned that 3 months was your first screenplay, and then you also mentioned you're constantly writing. How many scripts would you say you've written at this point, pilots and features?
So I've written about 3 movies, 2 of them dance movies, 2 completely different versions of a similar idea of a dance movie, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pilots, I think.
Okay. I'm just curious, just to kind of get an idea of the scope of kind of what you're talking about. And how many, over the course of how many years is that?
3.
Okay. So you're pumping this stuff out. So let's talk a little bit about 3 months and this blacklist table read. That's how you and I got in touch.
Yeah.
They're doing this table read of 3 months. Maybe you can walk us through that process. How did you kind of get on the radar of the blacklist, and what exactly did you do to get this table read from the blacklist?
So the blacklist has this great thing called the Blacklist Online, which is where writers themselves can upload their scripts, be it a teleplay or a screenplay, to their website. And you can purchase evaluations from industry insiders who rate your script, and based on those ratings and the reviews and what you categorize the script as, industry people like use this hub of scripts all the time to just kind of find what's next out there. And I uploaded 3 months, like way before any of this happened. Maybe when I first applied to these screenwriting competitions did I upload my script. And Franklin was at the Austin Film Festival and was sitting on the bus next to the screenplay judge who talked about my script, albeit he didn't name it because he wasn't allowed to. And then I think Franklin looked at like some of the people who had won these contests in the website, and it was a mixture of him finding the script himself after being on his website because of these competitions, and also my script was voted by the industry and rated. It was the top 5 drama scripts and the top 5 comedy scripts on the website simultaneously. And I opted in. The great thing about the Blacklist Online is you can opt into all these programs that they have set up with the Blacklist. So there's the Disney Feature Writers Program that I opted into that I'm a finalist for currently. There's the Sundance Diversity Initiative, which I opted into and I scored. So those things happened. And then he reached out and was like, hey, we're doing this podcast. You've had success on the website. You've had success on screenplay competitions. I've read your script. I love it. Do you want to do it? So it was kind of it was a mixture of different elements and components. But
when you uploaded the script originally, did you buy 2 reviews? Like, how did you kind of get the ball going?
I did. So here's the thing. I am a low expense kind of person, and a friend of mine at my first PA job, Chris Swellman, great guy, now works for the Disney Channel, but he said something because I was like, oh, all these screenwriting competitions and there's entry fees and like the Blacklist, there's like these fees for all this stuff. And he's like, there's no better way to spend your money if this is what you want to do than buying the opportunity to take chances on yourself. And I really took that to heart. So, you know, if it's a matter of like not getting wasted one weekend and spending $1,000 on drinks with your friends, or that rather than like, I ended up taking paychecks and creating like a little screenwriting fund for myself where I could dip into without any guilt and submit to these contests and pay for blacklist scripts. And a lot of the times, like with those contests I lost, there's like $100 gone, but then you don't always lose, hopefully. So that's I did buy those evaluations.
Okay, and how many did you buy originally? You bought 2 or?
I bought 2, and then when they started to get good reviews, I kept buying more just because I was like, because it's industry insiders reading your script, right? So I was like, yeah, it's $50, but like someone is like liking this. If my reviews were shit and they were like, go home and like be a garbage man, I probably would have been like, fuck you, and not bought any more. But it was great feedback, which is just so invaluable, both when it's positive and when it's constructive to help you kind of improve upon your storytelling. And yeah, I mean, it worked out for me.
Perfect. So how can people kind of keep up? I'm going to link to all that stuff. I want to get the Outfest contest. That's not a contest that I've mentioned, and the Big Bear. I will track down those links so people can find those in the show notes. And I'll get the actual podcast episode too. I will link to that in the show notes. How can people keep up with you and just follow along with what you're doing? If you have a blog, a Twitter handle, a Facebook page, anything you feel comfortable sharing, I will also put that in the show notes.
Yeah, so I'm not a huge social media person. I'm trying to be better. But it's my Twitter, my Instagram, and my Facebook, or it's just all my name, Jared Frieder.
Okay.
Yeah, super simple.
Facebook and on Twitter.
And Instagram.
Okay.
Those are just like ratchet photos of me being ridiculous, so I'm not sure that'll help.
Perfect. Well, Jared, this has been a great interview. Lots of, tactical advice as well as some inspirational stuff. So I really appreciate your coming on and talking with me.
Thank you so much for having me. This was awesome.
Thank you. Good luck to you.
You too.
Sounds good. We'll talk to you later. A quick plug for the SYS Screenwriting Analysis Service. It's a really economical way to get a high-quality professional evaluation on your screenplay. When you buy our 3-pack, you get evaluations such as $67 per script for feature films and just $55 for teleplays. All of the readers have professional experience reading for studios, production companies, contests, and agencies. You can read a short bio on each reader on our website. And you can pick the one who you think is the best fit for your script. Turnaround time is usually just a few days, but rarely more than a week. The readers will evaluate your script on 6 key factors: concept, characters, structure, marketability, tone, and overall craft, which includes formatting, spelling, and grammar. Every script will get a grade of pass, consider, or recommend, which should help you roughly understand where your script might rank if you went to submit it to a production company or an agency. We provide analysis on feature and television scripts. We also do proofreading without any analysis. We will also look at a treatment or outline and give you the same analysis on it. So if you're looking to vet some of your project ideas, this is a great way to do it. We will also write a logline and synopsis for you. You can add this service to the analysis, or you can simply purchase this service as a standalone product. As a bonus, if your script gets a recommend from a reader, you get a free email and fax blast to my list of industry contacts. This is the exact same blast service I use myself to promote my own scripts, and it's the same service I sell on the website. It's a great way to get your script into the hands of producers who are looking for material. So if you want a professional evaluation of your screenplay at a very reasonable price, check out www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/consultants. To wrap things up, I just want to touch on a few things from today's interview with Jared. I think there are lots of lessons from this interview. First, I've never heard of a screenplay getting so many accolades. He consistently got good scores on the blacklist and consistently won contests. So that's awesome for him and for his script. So most of us, and I include myself in this, are never going to get these sorts of consistent awards with a screenplay. What he did is exactly what Corey Mandel recommended on this podcast, and it's exactly what I recommend you not do in episode 100. So this is worth noting. He wrote something wholly original and unique to his experience. And again, if you're kind of wondering what I'm talking about, go back and listen to the last third of episode 100 and potentially those episodes with Corey Mandel as well. Corey Mandel, it's exactly what he said. Write something wholly original and unique to your own experience. And that's exactly what he did, and it worked out well for him. So that's exactly the strategy Corey Mandel recommends, and it's exactly what worked for him. So I think one thing to note is that I think his writing is probably pretty extraordinary. So that's worth checking out, the table read. You can actually hear this script read. I would definitely go and do that. I'm planning on doing it. I just interviewed him a few days ago, so I have not had time to go and actually listen to the screenplay and the Blacklist table read. But I've got it downloaded on my iPod, on my iPhone, and I'm definitely going to listen to that in the next few days. Really trying to understand why this script got so many positive reviews. Listen to it and really try and use some critical thinking about why you think this script, it got all of these reviews, consistently good reviews on the Blacklist. I've put my own scripts up on the Blacklist. I have definitely not got consistently good reviews. So it's worth kind of taking note of why a script like this does consistently win contests and consistently get good reviews on the Blacklist. But I still think there are lots of great takeaways from this interview. Even if we all can't write a script that is this good, I think there's lots of things that Jared said that can help all of us. First, the whole bit about LinkedIn is a great tactical tip that anyone who is listening to this podcast can use. Pay for the upgraded LinkedIn account like Jared did and start trying to network with people in the industry. That's a great tip. It's not something I've ever done, but it's definitely something you might want to check out. Also, think about what Jared did in terms of budgeting his money. I really like what he said about that. I get a lot of emails from people who are down to their last penny, and they're thinking about trying to use my email and fax blast service. This is a terrible idea. You never want to spend money on these services, and my own services included, if you can't afford to lose it. Screenwriting is highly speculative. The odds are you're not going to get a return, at least in the short term, on that money. So if you're down to your last penny, spend it on food, spend it on rent. Don't spend it on trying to blast out your screenplay. But the biggest takeaway for me is just how his career ultimately unfolded and came together. It wasn't any single thing that he did. It was the culmination of many things combined that pushed him forward each step of the way. He was entering and winning contests. He was using LinkedIn to get a low-level PA job. And to be clear, too, really listen to the description of his job at this company. You know, he was working as a production assistant. That's the lowest job in the entertainment industry. He was literally getting the executives their coffee. So he was starting at the bottom. But because he was writing and entering these contests, I'm sure he was telling his friends at the company, people were talking, and those contest wins led to him getting this meeting with the head of development at this company. So, you know, it wasn't the one thing individually. It wasn't just working in the industry, and it wasn't just winning the contest. It was the combination of the two that actually got some interest from his manager, and that actually ended up getting his first professional option and helping him write and his first professional credit. And it also led to him getting his literary manager. So it's really a combination of many things combined. It's not just one thing, winning contests. It's not just one thing of working in the industry. It was a combination of the two things. Hopefully, too, I practice what I preach. I'm working to raise money for a script I wrote and shoot it next year. I'm doing some paid writing assignments. I'm doing a spec TV show. And I'm marketing a bunch of my spec scripts too. I have several outstanding options right now. So I'm pushing forward on several fronts at the same time as well, hoping to get my career to the next level. And I just really think at all levels of the entertainment industry, this is what you do, probably all the way up to Steven Spielberg. He's probably got lots of different things going. And when something comes together, you just never know how those cards are going to break. You've got to have many, many projects in the work. You've got to be, you know, fighting battles on many fronts, lighting many fuses, and getting as many irons in the fire as possible. So I think that's great what Jared did. And I think it's great advice for anybody else. So keep this in mind. If you're just writing scripts and entering contests, that might not be enough. I hope it works out for you, but it might not be. You might need to go a little deeper than just entering contests. Enter the contest, put your scripts on the Blacklist, put them on Inktip, use my email and fax blast service. As many things as you can do, you know, working in the industry. And I've talked about this a lot on the podcast. Working in the industry really is like the single biggest thing you can do to actually advance your career. So keep that in mind too. If it's not possible for you to do that for whatever reason, then you've got to pursue some of these other avenues a little more aggressively. Anyway, put Jared on your radar. I think he's got a great career ahead of him, so we'll be tracking that, and hopefully he'll come back for an update in a little while after he's got some more projects going. I think it's really worth kind of just keeping an eye on what he's doing and following his story. Anyway, that's the show. Thank you for listening.